Now let's talk, hopefully fairly briefly, about how to conduct a survey. Step 1. Think of something that you want to know about people. I want to know how people feel about my product. I want to know how people feel about their lives. I want to know how people feel about February. I want to know how much sleep people get. I want to know something about people, so I'm going to go out and ask them. Now, if it's scientific, maybe you can go out and test them, but a lot of the time, we end up asking people questions. So first thing you need to do is come up with one or more really clear questions whose answer will give you that information. Like, how long did you sleep last night? Or maybe, how long do you sleep on average? Although, you have to be careful. Maybe people don't know how long they sleep. Maybe it's better to ask, when did you go to bed last night? When did you wake up? And you can do the calculation for them, because maybe people think they're getting 8 hours of sleep when in fact they're getting less. Or other way around. Maybe people are sleeping more than they think. So you have to get really good questions to ask the information that you want. Think of your target population. Who do you want to know this about? Do you want to know when college students how much sleep college students are getting? Do you want to know how much sleep people in general are getting? Adults or children? Be very specific about who you want to know this about. The more specific you are, the better your survey is going to turn out to be. Now, if you can, ask all of these people the question. If you want to know something about MCLA students, ask every single MCLA student. If you want to ask something about students in general, that's really hard to ask all those people. So if it's not possible, think of a way to randomly pick these people. Now, how do you randomly pick people? This is a real problem. If you want to randomly pick a student, well, is there a list of all the students, let's say students in the United States? Is there a list of all the college students in the United States? That would be great if there was one. You could randomly pick names off of the list. That counts as random. You want to make sure that everybody in the population has an equal chance of being picked. If you had a list of all the colleges in the country and you randomly picked one and then randomly picked a student, they wouldn't have an equal chance of being picked, because that would mean that UMass Amherst, with their 25,000 students, would have an equal chance of being picked as MCLA with their 2,000 students. And so the 25,000 people at UMass will have less of a chance of being picked than someone from MCLA, if that makes any sense. Now, there's a lot of problems that can come in surveys, and there's all sorts of science on this and all sorts of bickering, and different survey organizations have different techniques. But one thing that happens is not being random. It's very hard to be random. If you want to know how people are going to vote for president, you call people up usually and ask them. But you don't get any of the people with cell phones, because if you're picking the phone numbers out of a phone book, you're only getting people with listed phone numbers, and they don't list cell phones. This is a huge problem. There's a large number of people, disproportionately younger people, who only have cell phones these days, and therefore they're not getting picked in surveys. So if you can say, my population is people who have telephones, but who have phones in the phone book, but now you can't say that you're talking about people in general. You're only talking about people with landlines who choose to have their phone numbers listed. Maybe they're representative of the whole population, maybe they're not. So whatever you do, when you're conducting a survey, you have to be honest about what you're actually doing. You have to be honest about, well, I sent letters to houses, so I'm only getting people with addresses. Homeless people are not in my population. Be honest about that. Don't pretend that you're talking about all Americans if there is no chance of a homeless person being picked in your survey. Selection bias. This is a big one. Some people are more likely to answer questions than other people. Some people are really, really suspicious and they don't talk to telemarketers. Some people are really suspicious. They don't talk to people who come to their door. You aren't getting their input. And so they try very, very hard, and they offer prizes and things like that. But, if you offer a prize, then, and if the prize is an iPhone, the iPad, let's say, then people without iPads are more likely, I suspect, to fill it out. So you're still not getting everybody equally. It's very, very difficult. If you ask people how much money, if you want to find out how much money people are making, well, people with lots of money are probably more likely to answer this question than people who are poor and embarrassed about it. Unless, of course, people who are making tons and tons of money don't want to tell you what they're making. So some people are more likely to brag about things, and so you're going to get the people with good news answering your questions more than bad news. Now, selection bias is especially a problem if only a few people answer. You send an email message to every single student at MCLA, you ask them a number of questions, and what happens? You get 10 people who respond. Maybe these are the 10 most cheery, outgoing, I'm always happy to answer questions kind of people at MCLA. They are not necessarily, maybe this is what everybody at MCLA is like, but maybe all of the people who are, if you ask them, how do you feel about MCLA? And all 10 of the people rate it 9 or a 10, maybe everybody at MCLA is really happy, or maybe just the people who answered your survey are happy. Now, if you can get half the people at MCLA to answer, it doesn't matter. It's less likely that you're just getting the happy people or just getting a specific kind of people. You ask a survey about gun control. People who care very much about gun control, one way or the other, are going to be more likely to answer your survey than people who don't. So you're going to get people who want all the guns taken away are definitely going to fill out your survey. People who want to carry around machine guns in the streets, they're going to answer your questions. But the people who are like, I don't really care one way or the other, they're not going to fill out your survey. So your surveys are going to make it look like half the country is one way and half the country is the other way, whereas in fact there might be a lot of people in between who have sort of mixed feelings about the whole debate. They also don't care enough to fill out your survey. This is a problem. Interviewer bias. People might change their answers because of the person asking them. Back in the early 1900s, if you went around asking people in the South how they felt about race relations, just about everybody is going to say things are great, especially because maybe it's very possible that when a white person went up to a black person in the South, an African American, and said, how do you feel about things? Maybe they didn't feel all that comfortable giving an honest response. If a woman with kids comes to your door and says, I want to ask how you feel about education. Should we be spending as much money on education? You're probably at least a little bit more likely to say, yes, I care about education, than if she hadn't brought her kids, or if it was a man. Because you might be, a certain big chunk of the population is inclined to make people happy. And so they kind of want to give the answers that the person is asking. And it depends on the situation that you're in. If you ask people questions in church, or you ask people questions out of church, you might find attitudes are very different. Attitudes, to begin with, are different in church. People have a different kind of mindset when they're in church. And you have to be really careful about leading questions. I'm going to link an interesting article recently about how the very words you use to describe things change the way people feel about things. When you say, how do you feel about gun control? People think one way about gun control. If you say, how do you feel about defending the Constitution of the United States as regards the Second Amendment, even more people are in favor of it. If you say, how do you feel about ending gun violence? Well, all three of these words are talking about the same thing, but they sound very different. Who can be in favor of gun violence? Who can be against the Constitution of the United States? Not too many people. So the words that you use in your question affect the way people answer.